Today on Hearts of Heroes, first responders are put to the test when a small town is hit by 2 catastrophes in the same week.
Serious river rapids down at the end of our driveway.
And as floodwaters receded, they now faced a dangerous EF3 tornado.
There was no sign of it on the radars or anything. It just dropped out of the sky.
With so many lives on the line, these heroes had to use every resource to save the people of their community.
Before we could even get out of the truck was surrounded by people that had been hurt.
It's the human spirit that gets us through these tragedies, time and time again.
Preparation is key in surviving any natural disaster. And in May of 2019, Reno, Oklahoma was preparing for a tornado. They not only got hit by a tornado, but they also got devastating flash flooding as well. Suddenly, this quiet community was battling Mother Nature on more than one front.
The small town of El Reno, Oklahoma sits about 30 miles west of the capital, Oklahoma City. Unlike its big city neighbor, El Reno offers a slower pace of life.
It's one of the friendliest communities to be in. We have some small town weekend where we have jet boat races. It's a beautiful community.
And like so many small towns, El Reno is proud of the uniqueness that sets it apart.
We cook one of the largest onion burgers in the U.S. It's 800 pounds, and we cook it on Main Street during Burger Day Festival.
The area is also known for something else: wild weather. And that erratic weather left everyone on their toes in May of 2019.
We were supposed to have a big tornado outbreak, so our upper management did a great job of getting extra guys in so we'd be able to handle it if one was to hit.
The people of El Reno and first responders were certainly on high alert, as the month of May is the peak of tornado season. But by the night of May 21st, the people of El Reno thought the tornado threat was over, so they could breathe a sigh of relief.
We had a lot of our things down in our storm shelter, just in case we had to go to the cellar. That didn't happen. The tornado warnings passed, so we go to bed like any other night.
Although the threat of a tornado had passed, the flash flood threat was on, and it lasted through the early morning hours.
I woke up, it was probably about 4:45, 5 o'clock, and I start looking out all the windows and everything.
Megan Evans saw the water was coming dangerously close to her home.
The creek had come all the way up. It was at the end of the sidewalk. And so that's when my mother-in-law, Tammy, came down. I was like, have you talked to Tiff? Maybe you should call him and see.
Tammy immediately called her daughter, Tiffany.
She's like, the roads are flooding, so we're not gonna be able to get out. And I'm like, oh, Mom, it's 5 o'clock in the morning, I'll call you later.
Tiffany tried to go back to sleep, but soon she heard something ominous.
I could just hear like a whoosh, whoosh, whoosh sound, and it was water in our air vents. So I woke my husband up and we went to our back room, and there was already water coming in. And within 45 minutes to an hour, the water was pretty much coming in everywhere.
Megan was also trapped in the flood.
We could just see it up to the house. Once it started getting light out, yeah, there was no way. Like, river rapids, serious river rapids down at the end of our driveway.
Both Megan and Tiffany called 911 for help. Even first responders were flooded with these calls.
We were predicted to have tornadoes that day, so we were prepared for tornadoes, and we haven't really prepared ourselves for the floods and to do any swift water types of rescue.
To make matters worse, the floodwaters had risen up to 12 feet in some areas, making any rescue extremely difficult.
We instantly knew that we needed to switch gears and switch over and get the boat ready, get our gear ready, get the trucks ready, and then call in some extra hands because we were going to have a busy night.
First responders have to be prepared for any situation. So when the emergency changed from tornado to flood, the men and women of El Reno Fire Department realized they would have to prepare for a different kind of rescue.
While first responders were preparing the water rescue gear, floodwaters were rising at an alarming rate. Coming up, Tiffany and Megan find themselves with no way to escape.
We were stuck. There was no way to get out anywhere.
Then, double trouble. An EF3 tornado drops only days after that catastrophic flooding.
We're hit, we're buried in the kitchen.
But first, a tip to keep you safe.
Failing to evacuate flooded areas, entering flood waters, or even remaining after a flood has passed can result in personal injury or catastrophe.
If you are under a flood warning, find safe shelter right away. Do not walk, swim, or drive through floodwaters. If flash floods are a risk in your location, make sure to monitor potential signs such as heavy rain.
Disasters like these can seemingly come out of nowhere, so take precautions and always pay attention to the warning signs.
On May 21st, 2019, the city of El Reno was on high alert. Severe storms had the potential to bring tornadoes. And then a new threat emerged: flooding. Trapping people in their homes with no way of escaping, rising water infiltrated and took over the community.
We're surrounded by creeks to the north, to the east, and to the west. Everywhere was flooded. It looked like a lake right outside of our house.
There was no way to get out. So we were just sitting ducks.
Fortunately, El Reno firefighters Chisholm Johnson and Slade Terry are both certified in swiftwater rescue. After getting the initial 911 calls, Chisholm and Slade loaded up rescue boats to help those people trapped in the floods.
We would hit high spots that weren't flooded and we could drive easy. Then you come in a low spot and they would be flooded. Some of them we couldn't go down in the truck. We'd have to unload the boat and take the boat to the houses.
First responders made it to Tiffany's house first.
Whenever those guys showed up, it was such a relief because we had my grandma there and then my daughter, who was 4 at the time, and just trying to keep them calm, because how do you explain to a 4-year-old that there's nothing you can do about the water coming in the house?
Tiffany's family was quickly loaded onto the boat.
At one point, they couldn't even touch the road. They were having to use sticks to determine where the road was.
You don't know where the holes are at, you don't know where the culverts are at, the drainage ditches, and you walk over and you fall in the hole, you may never resurface.
These men and women who come to our rescue are prepared and well-trained for emergencies. But we shouldn't forget that often they are in as much danger as the people they are helping. But it's that kind of bravery that makes them heroic.
Once Tiffany's family was on dry land, first responders retrieved her sister-in-law and her family. Both women are grateful to the people who risked their lives to save them.
You don't think that something like that is going to happen. You have a plan if there's a fire. You have a plan if there's a tornado. We know what we're going to do to protect our kids. But whenever the water started coming in the house, I didn't know what to do but call 911.
Thank you for what you do. I couldn't do it. Putting yourself in freezing cold water that you don't even know what's underneath it, risk your lives for somebody else. That's a hero.
As the water receded, Tiffany and Megan began the process of rebuilding and planning to be prepared in the future.
You don't just up and leave your home, you know. I mean, and regardless of where you go to, you're always going to have earthquakes or tornadoes or anything. This is just another thing that I'm going to be prepared for and my family is going to be prepared for.
Everybody was rebuilding real quick after the floodwaters. It just taught me that our community was ready for a natural disaster when it happened. You can never predict them, you can never stop them, but you can come out on top ahead of them.
Coming up, El Reno is not out of the woods yet. Another disaster is looming later in the same week.
We were in the air. Then there was this big explosion, and then we dropped.
In May of 2019, the small town of El Reno, Oklahoma, endured 2 weather catastrophes in the span of just 4 days. First, severe thunderstorms brought through horrific flash flooding that took out cars and homes. Then, an EF3 tornado shredded parts of their town.
It's a whole different animal going from flooding, thinking you're going to have a tornado. And then on a day you're not necessarily supposed to have a tornado, one drops out of nowhere.
And that's what happened on the evening of May 25th.
It's gonna put it down right in front of us.
Rowena Black and her family live in the Skyview Park community in El Reno, Oklahoma.
Our day started out as a good day. Everybody, you know, had a normal day.
But a storm was brewing.
I had a feeling, I don't know why, but I had a bad feeling about this storm. I said, when I get home, I'm gonna have the kids get their emergency backpacks on and get ready.
Rowena decided it would be best for her family if they stayed with a friend who had a storm shelter.
We were watching the news, and the meteorologist said, yeah, we got a hook, a small hook.
A hook echo looks like a crescent shape on the radar. It can indicate a supercell thunderstorm. That means that it has rotation and potentially a tornado.
And my dad was like, that's us, we need to go. Woke all the kids up. We all put our shoes on. We were in the middle of getting dressed and everything. Pretty soon the trailer just started rocking. Boom, 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 side to side.
Their neighbor, Rachel Garrison, was settling down for the evening with her husband and 2 grandsons when the twister hit.
There was no sign of it on the radars or anything. It just dropped out of the sky.
That tornado, it was a quick spin-up tornado, which is a little different than like the tornadoes they were predicting on the 21st. And so that's where it kind of threw us through the loop.
I screamed at the oldest one to hit the dirt. And about that time, the neighbor's trailer hit me. Her kitchen sink came through all the walls, hit me in the head, and flipped over on top of us.
The Black family was scrambling to evacuate when their trailer was ripped from the ground.
We went up in the air. I don't know how far. You could just feel it go up in the air and just boom.
We were in the air. Then there was this big explosion. They say a freight train, it's worse than that. Then everything got still and quiet, and we were suspended in air, and then we dropped.
The tornado obliterated their trailer and sent the 10 family members literally flying in all directions.
I hit head first and landed all on my right side, like just really hard, just boom. And then I just felt everything collapse on top of me.
Soon, word of the tornado reached the El Reno Fire Department.
Our fire chief, he was already en route to the station, and he noticed some tornado damage on that side of town, and so he called for us to start responding that way, and he told us to go to Skyview.
As first responders headed in, people were reeling from the shock of what just hit them.
Chaos, destruction. Everything was topsy-turvy. There were children crying, of course. People were screaming, hollering names, you know, because they couldn't find this person or that person.
Rowena then called out to her husband, Gus, and granddaughter, Camilla.
I could hear him pulling the stuff. I don't know what was on top of me, but I could hear him pulling it off. And then when he would pull it off, and then it would be heavy, and then it would fall back on me. I seen Camilla. I seen her bend down and look at me. She said, push with your feet, Grandma, push. So I pushed as hard as I could with my feet to get myself out of there.
Rowena's son, Preston, and his wife were also trapped under heavy debris.
I heard my son, Mom, help, and I couldn't find him. There was washers and dryers and all kinds of stuff on top of my son and my daughter-in-law.
I was laying there and I tried to push myself out, but everything was too heavy. I kind of went out, and then when I came back to, I just had this like overwhelming strength. And I guess it was adrenaline, or I don't know what it was, but I started pushing myself out of the rubble.
Meanwhile, Preston's father and teenage daughter dug Preston's wife from the wreckage.
My dad and my oldest daughter, Camilla, are the ones who saved my wife. They pulled her out.
Neighbor Rachel Garrison was also trapped under heavy debris. When she came to, she could hear the phone ringing. It was her son, Elton, calling to check to see if they were okay.
I told him we're buried in the kitchen. It hit us and we're buried.
Her son immediately raced over and was shocked by what he saw.
I was looking to see where the trailer was because nothing looked familiar.
I just saw trailers like laid over and everything else. Then finally I heard my youngest two holler at me, and I kind of went around the side and I started literally throwing things out of the way and digging into where I could grab a hold of something and pick it up.
Soon, other people jumped in to help with the rescue.
Luckily, I had a couple people come by. Their trailer was right next to mine, parents, and so they were helping, trying to help me out.
In times of disaster, we see the best of people, neighbors helping neighbors, even though they are also going through the same devastation. These are the qualities that turn everyday people into real heroes.
Not long after the tornado hit, first responders were right there.
Before we could even get out of the truck, the truck was surrounded by people that had been hurt. We had to start triaging victims, and then as soon as Pafford, our EMS service, arrived, we transferred triage over to them, and that's when we started the search and rescue.
We were having to lift sections of house off of people or remove some to get them out of a certain area. That work's not quick, so it was just to slow down and kind of understand what you're doing and get the best tools available for the job.
While El Reno firefighters were pulling people from the piles of debris, EMTs began transporting the injured to the hospitals.
I thought I was gonna die because I couldn't breathe. And I had just a lot, the most pain I ever felt.
At that time, I didn't know that I had a big gash in the back of my leg, on my thigh. My first thought was my son. Lord, please don't let nothing happen to my son. Let him live, please.
Often when people experience extreme psychological or physical trauma, they may be in a state of shock and not realize how badly they are injured. So it is imperative that they are immediately checked out by a medical professional.
Coming up, after losing so much, the families come back to reflect on the event that changed their lives.
There's still, as you can see, things that were lost at a home. It was a good home for as long as we had it.
But first, something more to keep you safe.
Making plans to be prepared just starts with the want to keep yourself and those around you safe.
Communication is key. Every 6 months, review your disaster preparedness plan with those around you. Check your disaster supply kits and refresh expiring items, such as food and medications. Also, conduct fire and evacuation drills regularly.
Have the confidence to know you can make it through something as trying as a tornado. If you follow the instructions of the professionals, you'll be one step closer to having a safer tomorrow.
On the evening of May 25th, 2019, a tornado ripped through El Reno, Oklahoma. Complete destruction left in its path.
It's a short-lived tornado. It's 2.2 miles, like 75 foot wide, and is a strong EF3. So it's had winds of 160 to 165 miles an hour.
The Skyview Park community was one of the hardest areas hit. By the time first responders arrived, the place was unrecognizable.
You couldn't really see where one home was, where the next one was. There were a couple trailer homes that were stacked on top of each other, but most of them were just rubble.
The event not only destroyed homes, it left a number of people with serious injuries.
My lung was collapsed, you know. I know what it's like not to be able to breathe. My wife suffered a broken pelvis, 9 broken ribs, a broken shoulder.
Incredibly, despite the physical trauma, all 10 of their family members survived this tornado, and they are fully aware of how lucky they are to have made it through.
As a family, we survived it together, we're healing together, we love each other.
Like her neighbors, Rachel Garrison lost everything that she owned in this unforgiving tornado.
There's still, as you can see, things that were lost at a home. But it's just too sad to look, you know. I see these seeds growing, so I know life is renewing, but it was a good home for as long as we had it, so.
While their futures hold some uncertainties, both families are sure of one thing: the gratitude that they have for all the people who came to the rescue in their time of need.
A lot of people helped us. They donated a lot of things, food, the place we're living at now, you know, everything.
We have a very good community here, really. and it's family. It's not, you know, strangers that live around each other. Everybody's family.
The people of El Reno, Oklahoma could never have imagined the dual tragedies. What they did discover was the bravery and compassion of not just the first responders, but their neighbors too. I'm Ginger Zee. Thanks so much for watching.